Why was everyone staring at the woman in the corner? She sat alone at that back table in Naval Station Mayport's mess hall, eating scrambled eggs like it was just another Thursday morning. Standard navy blue uniform. Brown hair pulled back in regulation style. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screamed danger. But 5 young recruits couldn't take their eyes off her. And in 20 seconds, they'd learn why you should never judge a book by its cover. Especially when that book happens to be one of the deadliest warriors the United States military has ever trained. Petty Officer Emma Thompson pushed through the heavy doors at 6:30 hours. The smell hit her first. Coffee, bacon grease, that industrial cleaner they used on the floors every night. The mess hall was already packed. Sailors in various uniforms filled every table, forks scraping against trays, voices creating that familiar breakfast chaos she'd heard on bases from Virginia to California to places she couldn't name without clearance. Her boots made soft sounds against the polished floor, not silent, just controlled, the kind of footsteps that belonged to someone who'd learned to move through hostile territory without drawing attention. She kept her head down, eyes forward, but her peripheral vision was working overtime. Exits, blind spots, potential threats. It wasn't paranoia. It was training. The kind that gets drilled into you when failure means you don't come home. Emma was 29 years old, 5'7", athletic build hidden beneath that loose-fitting uniform that didn't do her any favors, brown eyes that seemed ordinary until you looked closer, until you noticed they were always scanning, always calculating, always 3 steps ahead of whatever was happening in the room. Most people never looked that close. She grabbed a tray from the stack, moved through the serving line like water flowing around rocks, scrambled eggs from the first station, sausage links from the second, 2 pieces of wheat toast barely browned. The kitchen staff smiled at her, made small talk about the weather, about the upcoming long weekend, about nothing that mattered. Emma smiled back, kept her answers short, polite but forgettable. That's how she preferred it. Drawing attention was dangerous. Not physically, not here, but dangerous in other ways, ways that could compromise missions, ways that could put others at risk, ways that could unravel the carefully constructed cover story she'd maintained for the past 20 months. Because Emma Thompson wasn't just another logistics specialist shuffling papers in some forgotten office. That's what her official record said. That's what everyone here believed. But official records lie when they need to, when the truth is classified, when the truth could get people killed. She found her usual spot, back corner table, wall behind her, clear sight lines to both entrances, old habits, good habits, the kind that keep you alive when things go sideways in places where backup is 12 hours away and hope is a luxury you can't afford. Emma sat down, unwrapped her silverware from the paper napkin, started eating. The eggs were overcooked. The sausage was bland. The toast was cold. It didn't matter. She'd eaten worse. MREs in 110-degree heat. Protein bars during 72-hour ops. Once, nothing but rainwater and determination for 3 days straight. Bland eggs were a luxury. But something felt off this morning. That itch between her shoulder blades, that tightness in her gut, combat instinct. The kind you can't explain to someone who's never had bullets snap past their head. She wasn't in danger, not real danger, but something was coming. She could feel it. At a table 15 feet away, 5 male recruits were finishing their breakfast. They'd been at Mayport for 4 weeks. Still had that fresh from basic training shine. Still believed the world owed them respect just for wearing the uniform. Still thought being young and strong meant being unstoppable. Tyler Jackson sat at the center of the group, tall kid, maybe 6'2". Brown hair buzzed military short, Georgia accent thick enough to cut with a knife. He'd been watching Emma since she sat down, whispering to his friends, gesturing with his fork. His voice carried just far enough for her to hear. That wasn't an accident. "Look at her," Tyler said, loud enough now that nearby tables could catch fragments. "Thinks she's so tough because she wears the uniform." Carlos Mendez laughed, shorter guy, Texas drawl, overcompensating for something Emma couldn't quite identify yet. These women think they can do everything men can do. It's ridiculous. Emma kept eating, kept her face neutral. She'd heard it before, in a dozen different mess halls, from 100 different men who thought physical size equaled capability, who thought testosterone trumped training, who thought gender determined worth. It never stopped stinging, not completely, but she'd learned to compartmentalize, to let the words bounce off like rain on a windshield, to save her energy for things that mattered. Anthony Rodriguez was smaller than Tyler and Carlos, made up for it with volume. Someone should teach her a lesson about respect, he said, cracking his knuckles in that theatrical way people do when they want to intimidate without actually committing. Show her what real sailors look like. Kevin Park looked uncomfortable. You could see it in his posture, in the way his eyes kept darting toward Emma, then away, then back again. He'd been raised better, raised to respect women, raised to think before acting. But peer pressure is a powerful thing, especially when you're 20 years old and desperate to belong. Brandon Miller was the oldest, 22, self-appointed leader, the kind of guy who mistakes confidence for competence, who confuses arrogance with authority. Maybe we should go have a conversation with her, he said with a grin that made Emma's jaw tighten. She'd seen that grin before, on bullies in high school, on instructors who wanted to see her quit, on enemy combatants who thought they'd captured an easy target. That grin never ended well, for them. Emma took another bite of eggs, chewed slowly, kept her breathing steady. Her heart rate was slightly elevated now, not from fear, from anticipation, from that primal part of her brain that knew conflict was approaching and was already calculating responses, strategies, exit points. But there was something they didn't know, something nobody in this mess hall knew, something Emma hadn't told anyone at Mayport because her orders were crystal clear. Maintain cover, stay invisible, don't make waves. 20 months ago, Emma Thompson had graduated from basic underwater demolition SEAL training, one of only a handful of women who'd ever completed the program, one of the few who'd survived Hell Week, who'd endured the cold, the exhaustion, the constant physical and mental torment designed to break even the strongest candidates. She'd learned to operate in hostile environments where hesitation meant death, mastered multiple forms of combat, made split-second decisions while carrying 80 pounds of gear through surf so cold it felt like knives. She'd proved herself against men twice her size and half again as stubborn, earned respect from instructors who didn't believe women belonged in special operations. But her record didn't reflect any of that. Her file said logistics specialist. Her assignments were carefully crafted lies. Her entire military identity was a cover story designed to protect her real capabilities and missions. The Navy wasn't ready to publicly acknowledge female SEALs. Not yet. So Emma existed in the shadows, doing the work, getting no credit, accepting that sacrifice because the mission mattered more than ego. The 5 recruits were standing now, pushing back their chairs. Brandon led the way. Tyler followed. Carlos and Anthony fell in behind. Kevin came last, hesitant, uncertain, but unable to break away from the group. Emma watched them approach through her peripheral vision, didn't turn her head, didn't acknowledge their movement, just kept eating her eggs, kept calculating. 5 opponents, all larger, all younger, all probably strong from recent basic training. Confined space, limited room to maneuver, crowd of witnesses, security cameras overhead. She could end this before it started, flash her credentials, invoke authority, make them back down with rank and position. But something held her back. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was exhaustion from years of proving herself. Maybe it was just the stubborn part of her that refused to hide anymore. They formed a loose circle around her table, close enough to intimidate, far enough to maintain deniability. Tyler took point, leaned forward, placed both hands on her table like he owned the space. "I think you should apologize for taking a man's job," he said, voice dripping with condescension. Then maybe consider transferring to a position more suitable for someone like you. Emma set down her fork, looked up at the 5 young men surrounding her. Her expression remained calm, almost serene, but something shifted in her eyes, something that should have warned them, should have sent them running. The casual observer might not notice, but anyone with real combat experience would recognize that shift from relaxed awareness to focused readiness. From human being to weapon. "I'm not interested in having this conversation," Emma said quietly, voice steady, controlled, final. "I suggest you all return to your business." The mess hall was growing quieter, conversations dying, forks stopping midair. Everyone could sense it, that moment before everything changes, that breath before the storm. Some sailors looked ready to intervene. Others seemed curious to see how it would resolve. Kitchen staff were whispering about whether to call security. Tyler leaned closer. "We're not done talking to you yet. You need to learn some respect for the men who actually belong in this uniform." And that's when Emma knew. There was no talking her way out, no diplomatic solution, no walking away. These 5 young men had made their choice, had drawn their line, had decided that embarrassing a lone female sailor would make them feel bigger, stronger, more important. They had no idea, they just made the biggest mistake of their military careers. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. What goes through your mind when you're surrounded? When 5 men close in and escape isn't an option, most people feel panic, that animal fear that makes your hands shake and your vision narrow. But Emma Thompson wasn't most people. As Tyler Jackson leaned across her table with his hands planted like territorial markers, Emma felt something different. Clarity. Cold, precise, absolute, like ice forming over still water. This wasn't the first time someone had underestimated her. It wouldn't be the last, but it might be the most public. She stood slowly, movements fluid, controlled, the kind of grace that comes from thousands of hours of repetition until action becomes reflex. She was shorter than all 5 of them, smaller, lighter by probably 40 or 50 pounds per man. By every conventional measure she was outmatched, outnumbered, overpowered. Conventional measures don't account for 20 months of classified training. "Last chance," Emma said, voice carrying clearly through the hushed mess hall. "Walk away now and we can pretend this never happened." The room had gone eerily quiet. 400 sailors eating breakfast just minutes ago. Now maybe 300 were watching, phones coming out of pockets, security cameras recording everything. This moment would be documented, analyzed, shared. But Emma wasn't thinking about that. She was thinking about 5 points of threat. 5 young men who'd crossed a line they didn't understand existed. Tyler laughed, that condescending bark people use when they think they've won. "You're not in any position to make threats. There are 5 of us and 1 of you. Maybe you should be the one walking away." Emma said nothing. Sometimes words were wasted breath. Sometimes the only communication that mattered came through action, through consequence, through teaching lessons that couldn't be explained, only experienced. She tried the diplomatic approach, given them multiple opportunities to de-escalate, to save face, to walk away with nothing more damaged than their pride. But diplomacy only works when both sides want peace. These 5 didn't want peace. They wanted validation, wanted to prove something to themselves and each other, wanted to feel powerful by making someone else feel weak. Emma understood that instinct, had seen it in training, in combat, in every arena where physical capability became a measure of worth. Men who needed to dominate to feel whole, who confused strength with violence, who mistook cruelty for courage. She'd beaten men like this before, better trained, better motivated, men who actually knew how to fight instead of just posturing. These 5 were children playing dress-up, wearing uniforms they hadn't earned, speaking about respect they didn't understand. Brandon Miller moved closer, tried to use his height to intimidate. "I think she's scared," he taunted. "Look at her just standing there. She knows she can't handle all 5 of us." Emma's training was running calculations in the background of her mind. Tyler was the leader, most aggressive, probably first to engage. Carlos seemed nervous but committed. Anthony was loud but undisciplined. Kevin appeared uncomfortable, might withdraw if things escalated. Brandon was the instigator, dangerous in his overconfidence. The confined space actually worked in her favor. 5 large men couldn't all attack simultaneously. They'd get in each other's way, trip over chairs, block each other's movements. Their size advantage became a liability in close quarters. Emma had fought in smaller spaces, hallways, stairwells, shipping containers. She knew how to use tight spaces, how to turn environment into ally. "I'm going to give you one more opportunity to de-escalate," Emma said, voice still calm, still steady, like she was discussing whether instead of impending violence. "You're all young and you've made a mistake. Don't make it worse." Surrounding sailors were openly watching now. Some had moved closer, others had backed away, creating space, creating distance. Everyone could feel it, that electricity before lightning strikes, that pressure before the dam breaks. Several senior enlisted personnel were making their way through the crowd, too far away, too late to stop what was coming. Kevin felt it too, that gnawing doubt, that voice in his head screaming that something was wrong, that Emma's calm in the face of being surrounded wasn't weakness, wasn't fear, was something else entirely, something dangerous. "Guys, maybe we should just leave her alone," he said quietly. "Shut up, Kevin." Tyler's voice had an edge now, frustration bleeding through. The situation wasn't going how he'd imagined. Emma should be scared, should be backing down, should be begging them to leave her alone. Instead, she stood there like a statue, unmoved, unafraid, unimpressed. It made him angry, made him feel small, made him need to prove himself even more. "You think you're better than us because you've been in the Navy longer," Tyler continued. "We're going to teach you a lesson about respect." Emma's eyes hardened, just slightly, just enough. She'd tried, given them every chance, but they were determined, committed, already mentally past the point of return. Her training kicked into high gear. Everything slowed down. That tunnel vision athletes talk about. That flow state where time becomes negotiable. Her mind was cataloging details. Tyler's weight distribution, Brandon's breathing pattern, Carlos's nervous hand movements, Anthony's lack of balance, Kevin's positioning near the exit, distances, angles, potential weapons, escape routes, all processed in microseconds, all filed away for instant access. The mess hall felt suspended, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting, watching, some with horror, some with curiosity, some with that dark excitement people get when violence is imminent and they're safely on the sidelines. Carlos made the first move, reached out to grab Emma's arm, probably meant to just intimidate her, push her around, establish dominance. His fingers had barely touched her sleeve when everything changed. Emma moved with lightning speed that seemed to violate physics. Her left hand snapped up, caught Carlos's extended wrist in a grip like steel. Before he could react, before he could process what was happening, Emma stepped forward, drove her right elbow into his solar plexus with surgical precision. Not random, not wild, calculated, controlled, hitting exactly the right spot with exactly the right force. Carlos doubled over. The air exploded from his lungs in a sound between a gasp and a groan. His face went pale, eyes wide, completely unprepared for the pain radiating through his torso. He was out of the fight. 3 seconds. That's all it took. 3 seconds to disable a man 50 pounds heavier. Emma didn't stop, couldn't stop. Stopping meant giving the others time to coordinate, time to adapt, time to realize what they were facing. She spun Carlos around, used him as a human shield, positioning, always positioning, using his body to block the others while she assessed remaining threats. Tyler stood frozen, his brain struggling to catch up with his eyes. One moment they'd been intimidating a lone female sailor. The next, Carlos was gasping for air and being used as a barrier. It didn't compute, didn't fit the narrative. Women weren't supposed to fight like this, weren't supposed to move like this, weren't supposed to be dangerous. Anthony's street fighting instincts kicked in before his brain could catch up. He lunged forward, trying to grab Emma from behind, trying to use surprise, but Emma had been tracking his movement through peripheral vision, had known he'd be next, had already planned her response. She released Carlos, let him stumble away still trying to breathe, pivoted to meet Anthony's attack. As he reached for her, Emma ducked under his grasping arms. Low, fast, unexpected, swept his legs with a precise kick to his ankles, not hard, just perfectly placed, just enough to take his foundation. Anthony's momentum carried him forward as his feet were yanked backward. Basic physics. His body went horizontal, crashed into an empty table with a sound that made everyone wince. Trays scattered, dishes shattered. Anthony lay tangled in chairs and broken ceramic, trying to figure out what just happened. The mess hall erupted, shouts, gasps, exclamations in a dozen languages. Cell phones everywhere now, recording, streaming, sharing. This moment would be viral before lunch, would be analyzed by military experts and civilians alike, would change conversations about women in combat, but Emma wasn't thinking about any of that. She was thinking about three remaining threats. Kevin took a step backward, hands coming up, not in fighting stance, in surrender, in recognition, in that universal signal that means I was wrong and I'm out. Emma gave him a slight nod, acknowledged his intelligence, his willingness to adapt, to admit mistake. That took more courage than attacking. Brandon realized his friends were being systematically dismantled, realized this wasn't going according to plan, realized he needed to act before Emma picked them off one by one. He charged, fists raised, planning to overpower her with superior size and strength, planning to use rage and momentum. Planning wrong. Emma had been expecting this response, had been ready. As Brandon approached, she sidestepped, minimal movement, minimum energy, grabbed his extended arm, used his own momentum against him in a perfect hip throw that would have made her instructors proud. Brandon flew over her shoulder, seemed to hang in the air for a moment. Then gravity remembered its job. He landed hard on his back on the polished floor. The impact knocked the wind from his lungs, knocked the fight from his spirit, knocked some sense into his skull. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how the world had turned upside down so quickly. Tyler was alone now, 4 friends down or out, one backing away in surrender, just him and the woman he'd thought was weak. The woman who just dismantled his entire group in less than 20 seconds. He made a desperate lunge, pride demanding he try, ego refusing to accept reality. Emma caught his arm, spun him around, applied a control hold that put him face down on the floor in seconds, precise, efficient, final, her knee in his back, his arm locked at an angle that promised pain if he struggled, her voice calm in his ear. Don't move. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 20 seconds. 20 seconds to disable 4 attackers and control a 5th. 20 seconds to prove that assumptions about gender and capability were just comfortable lies. 20 seconds to change everything. The mess hall fell completely silent. Everyone stared. At Emma, at the 4 recruits on the ground, at Kevin with his hands raised, at the scattered dishes and overturned furniture, at the impossible thing they just witnessed. Emma Thompson stood calmly in the center of the chaos, barely breathing hard, hair still perfect in its regulation bun, uniform barely wrinkled, like she just finished a light workout instead of dominating 5 men who'd threatened her. But inside, her heart was pounding, not from exertion, from exposure, from knowing that her carefully maintained cover was cracking, from understanding that this moment would have consequences far beyond this mess hall, far beyond these 5 humbled recruits. Sometimes the most dangerous battles aren't the ones you fight, they're the ones you win. Have you ever watched something impossible happen right in front of you? Not magic tricks or special effects. Something real that shouldn't be possible but undeniably is. 400 sailors had just witnessed exactly that. And in the eerie silence that followed, you could almost hear their brains trying to process what their eyes had seen, trying to reconcile the quiet woman eating breakfast with the warrior who just dismantled 5 men like they were training dummies. Tyler groaned beneath Emma's control hold. His earlier confidence completely evaporated, replaced by pain, embarrassment, the crushing weight of reality. He'd made assumptions, based everything on physical appearance, on gender, on comfortable stereotypes that told him women were weaker, slower, less capable. Those assumptions were now grinding his face into the polished floor while 400 people watched. Emma maintained her position, professional, controlled, her knee applying just enough pressure to keep Tyler immobilized without causing injury, her grip on his arm locked at that perfect angle where resistance meant pain but compliance meant relief. This was textbook SEAL training: minimum force, maximum control, end the threat, protect yourself, don't escalate beyond necessity. But her mind was racing, calculating consequences. This wasn't some dark alley in a hostile country. This was a U.S. military installation with cameras and witnesses and protocols. She just publicly displayed capabilities that didn't match her cover story. Logistics specialists didn't move like that, didn't fight like that, didn't disable 5 opponents in under 20 seconds like it was muscle memory. Carlos was still doubled over 20 feet away, slowly catching his breath. That elbow strike to the solar plexus was precisely calibrated, hard enough to immediately disable him, gentle enough to avoid lasting damage. He'd be sore for a few days, maybe bruised, but nothing broken, nothing permanent, except maybe his pride. Anthony lay tangled among overturned chairs and scattered dishes, holding his ankle where Emma's sweep had connected. His street-fighting instincts had betrayed him. Instinct without discipline is just chaos. Emma's instructors had taught her that during week 3 of Bud S, some lessons you learn in classrooms. Some you learn getting your legs swept out from under you repeatedly until you stop leading with emotion. Brandon remained flat on his back, staring at the ceiling like it held answers. His breath was coming back, slow, ragged. That hip throw had been perfect, textbook execution, using his momentum, his weight, his aggression, turning his strength into his downfall. The bigger they are, they say, and Brandon was learning exactly what comes after. Kevin stood apart with hands raised. Smart kid, smart enough to recognize when you're outmatched, smart enough to quit before you get hurt, smart enough to admit mistake before mistake becomes catastrophe. Emma respected that, respected knowing when to walk away. That took courage most people never developed. Senior Chief Rodriguez pushed through the crowd. He was a stocky man in his mid-40s, 23 years in the Navy, seen action in 3 different theaters, the kind of seasoned veteran who'd forgotten more about combat than most people ever learned. His eyes swept the scene. 4 recruits down, 1 surrendered, 1 woman standing calm in the center. His expression shifted from concern to confusion to something like recognition. What the hell happened here? His voice carried authority that cut through the shocked murmuring of the crowd. Tyler tried to speak. His voice came out muffled against the floor. Emma eased pressure slightly, gave him room to breathe, to talk, but didn't release him. Not yet. Not until security arrived or someone with appropriate rank took control. She attacked us, Tyler managed. The words sounded hollow even as he said them. 400 witnesses said otherwise. Dozens of phones had captured the entire encounter. Reality wasn't negotiable. Petty Officer Garcia stepped forward. She'd been eating 3 tables away when it started, had watched the whole thing unfold. "That's not what happened, Chief," she said clearly. "These 5 recruits surrounded her, made threats. One of them grabbed her first. She defended herself." Other voices joined in, confirming, clarifying, describing how 5 men had cornered 1 woman, how they'd refused multiple warnings, how Emma had given them every opportunity to back down, how they'd chosen escalation, how they'd learned very publicly why that was a mistake. Chief Rodriguez looked at Emma, really looked at her. His eyes narrowed slightly, that recognition growing stronger. He'd seen those movements before, that efficiency, that specific brand of controlled violence that came from one source. "Release him, petty officer," Rodriguez said. Emma complied immediately, released Tyler's arm, stepped back, snapped to attention, professional, disciplined. Everything by the book now that someone with rank had taken command. Tyler scrambled to his feet, wobbled slightly, found his balance. His face was red from exertion, from embarrassment, from shame. "All five of you," Rodriguez pointed at the recruits, "against that wall, now." They moved, Kevin quickest, then Tyler, Carlos limping slightly, Anthony favoring his ankle, Brandon last still trying to catch his breath. They lined up like schoolchildren waiting for punishment, which Emma supposed they were. "Petty Officer Garcia," Rodriguez continued, "get Master-at-Arms down here. These five are going to have a very long conversation with security about appropriate conduct and assault." "Yes, Chief." Garcia pulled out her phone. The crowd was buzzing now, conversations erupting, people showing each other videos. Already the footage was spreading. Social media algorithms detecting viral content, pushing it out, amplifying it. Within hours it would have millions of views. Within days it would be international news. Within weeks it would change Navy policy. But none of that had happened yet. Right now it was just a mess hall full of shocked sailors and five young men learning that actions have consequences. Rodriguez turned his full attention to Emma, studied her with the careful eye of someone who'd seen many different types of warriors throughout his career. "Petty Officer Thompson." He made it formal, professional, creating distance. "I think we need to have a conversation about your background and training. Those weren't standard Navy combat techniques you just demonstrated." Emma met his gaze steadily, knew what was coming, knew her cover story was about to be challenged by someone with enough experience to recognize truth. The careful balance she'd maintained between public identity and classified role was cracking, fracturing, about to shatter completely. "Yes, Chief," she replied simply, offered no additional information. Her training had been clear. Reveal classified details only when absolutely necessary, only through proper channels, never volunteer, never confirm, never deny unless denial itself compromises security. "Those moves," Rodriguez said quietly, stepping closer so their conversation wouldn't carry. "The way you assess threats, the control holds, the efficiency, I've only seen that one place." He paused, let the implication hang. "And logistics specialists don't train there." Emma said nothing. Sometimes silence was the only appropriate response. Sometimes saying nothing said everything that needed saying. Rodriguez nodded slowly, understanding passing between them, veteran to warrior, recognition to recognition. "We'll talk later, through proper channels, but you should know." He glanced at the crowd, at the phones, at the videos already viral. "Your cover just got complicated." "I understand, Chief." Master-at-Arms personnel arrived, 4 of them. They took statements, reviewed footage, interviewed witnesses. The facts were undisputed. 5 recruits had surrounded and threatened a lone female sailor. She defended herself, textbook self-defense. Excessive force wasn't even a question. She'd used exactly what was necessary, nothing more. The 5 recruits were escorted out. They'd face disciplinary action, possibly court-martial depending on how seriously command took this. Their careers were effectively over before they'd really begun. 4 weeks of service ending in disgrace, in video documentation of their failure, in becoming internet cautionary tales about assumptions and respect. Emma gave her statement, factual, precise, emotionless, just what happened, when, how, why. She didn't mention her SEAL training, didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. The truth was in the footage, in the controlled efficiency of her movements, in the fact that she disabled 4 men and controlled a 5th without seriously injuring anyone. The mess hall slowly returned to normal. People finished breakfast. Conversations resumed, but everything had changed. Emma Thompson was no longer just another sailor. She was the woman, the one who'd fought 5 men, the one who'd proved that gender didn't determine capability, the one who'd done the impossible while 400 people watched. She collected her tray, still had half her eggs left, cold now, congealed. She wasn't hungry anymore anyway, dumped it, stacked the tray, walked toward the exit. People moved out of her way, some with respect, some with fear, some with that complicated mixture of admiration and unease that comes from watching someone you underestimated reveal their true nature. Outside, the Florida sun was climbing higher. The air was already thick with humidity. Emma took a deep breath, let it out slowly. Her hands weren't shaking. Her heart rate was returning to normal. Physiologically, she was fine. Mentally, she knew her life had just changed forever. The quiet SEAL operator who'd spent 20 months maintaining cover had just become the most famous sailor in the Navy. The video would go viral. Media would investigate. Her past would be scrutinized. Questions would be asked. Some she could answer. Some she couldn't. Some she wouldn't. But one thing was certain. She'd never blend into the background again. Never be anonymous. Never be underestimated. Sometimes the most important battles aren't the ones we choose. They're the ones that choose us. What happens after you become famous for something you never wanted anyone to know? Emma Thompson stood outside the mess hall, feeling the Florida heat settle over her like a weighted blanket. Inside, Master at Arms personnel were still taking statements. Security cameras were being reviewed. Reports were being filed. The bureaucratic machinery of military justice was grinding into motion. But out here, in the parking lot between buildings, Emma was alone with the consequences of 20 seconds that would define the rest of her career. Her phone buzzed, then again, then continuously text messages, emails, notifications flooding in faster than she could dismiss them. She pulled it out, saw her commanding officer's name. 3 missed calls in the last 5 minutes. She called back 2 rings. Thompson, Commander Patricia Hayes didn't believe in pleasantries when situations demanded immediate attention. What the hell happened at the mess hall? Ma'am, 5 recruits surrounded me and became physically aggressive. I defended myself using appropriate force. Appropriate force. Hayes's voice carried that particular tone that meant she'd already seen the footage, already knew the details, was asking more to hear Emma's version than to gather information. You disabled 4 men in under 20 seconds. That's not standard self-defense training, petty officer. Emma said nothing. Let the silence stretch. Hayes knew her real background, had known from the beginning, was one of maybe 6 people at Mayport cleared for that information. The question wasn't about what happened. It was about what came next. The video is everywhere, Hayes continued. Twitter, Reddit, Facebook. Local news is already calling. National media will follow by this afternoon. Your face is currently being viewed by millions of people who are very curious about who you are and what training you have that allows you to fight like that. Understood, ma'am. No, Thompson, I don't think you do understand. Hayes's voice softened slightly, not quite sympathetic, but acknowledging the complexity. We've kept your background classified for operational security, for your protection, for future mission capability. That's all compromised now. People will dig. Reporters will investigate. Eventually someone will figure it out. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, but soon. Emma closed her eyes, felt the weight of it. 20 months of careful cover, of living a double life, of being 2 people simultaneously, all crumbling because 5 young men decided to prove something to themselves, because she'd refused to back down, because she defended herself instead of taking abuse to maintain her cover. What do we do, ma'am? That's above my pay grade, Hayes sighed. I've already forwarded this up the chain. Naval Special Warfare Command is aware. They're coordinating with public affairs, trying to get ahead of it, control the narrative before the narrative controls us. You need to get off base. Go home, don't talk to anyone, especially media. Refer all inquiries to public affairs. And Thompson, yes, ma'am. You didn't do anything wrong. Those recruits assaulted you. You defended yourself. Whatever happens next, remember that. This isn't your fault. The line went dead. Emma stood there holding her phone, wondering if Hayes was right, if this wasn't her fault, or if she could have handled it differently, could have flashed credentials earlier, could have backed down, could have taken the harassment to preserve her cover, could have made different choices that wouldn't have ended with viral videos and compromised operations. But she hadn't. She'd stood her ground, defended herself, refused to let five bullies dictate her response. And maybe that was worth the cost. Maybe dignity mattered more than cover stories. Maybe proving that women could handle themselves mattered more than operational security. Or maybe she was just rationalizing, justifying, making herself feel better about choices that couldn't be unmade. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She sent it to voicemail. 3 more unknown numbers followed. Media already. Probably called the base. Got transferred around. Somehow obtained her personal number through whatever means journalists used when they wanted a story. Emma walked to her car, gray Honda Civic, nothing special, nothing that stood out. She'd chosen it specifically for that reason. Blending in, being forgettable, she slid into the driver's seat, started the engine. The air conditioning hit her face. She just sat there, hands on the wheel, engine running, going nowhere. Across the parking lot, she saw Petty Officer Garcia walking toward her. Emma considered driving away, avoiding conversation, but Garcia had backed her up, had told the truth when it mattered. That deserved acknowledgement. Garcia reached the car. Emma rolled down her window. "Hey," Garcia said, simple, direct. "You okay?" "I've been better." "That was," Garcia struggled for words. "I've never seen anything like it, the way you moved, the control. Where did you learn to fight like that?" Emma met her eyes, saw genuine curiosity, not hostility, not judgment, just honest question from one sailor to another. "Can't talk about it, sorry." Garcia nodded, understanding. Military life was full of things you couldn't talk about, classified operations, secret clearances, information compartmentalized for security. Fair enough. But Thompson, what you did in there? Those guys needed that lesson. And every woman who watched that video is going to feel a little stronger knowing they saw you stand up for yourself. That matters, more than you probably realize. Emma felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. Maybe this wasn't entirely disaster. Maybe there was value in visibility, in representation, in showing the world that women could be warriors too. That gender didn't determine capability. That underestimation was dangerous. "Thanks, Garcia." "Any time." Garcia stepped back. "And if you ever want to grab coffee and not talk about classified things, let me know." Emma smiled, actually smiled, first time since this morning. "I'll take you up on that." She drove home on autopilot. Small apartment in base housing. 1 bedroom, minimal furniture. Spartan by civilian standards but luxurious compared to deployment accommodations. She'd slept in worse places. Much worse. This was palace by comparison. Inside, she dropped her keys on the counter, kicked off her boots, collapsed onto the couch, turned on the television. Cable news was already running the story. Female sailor defends herself against 5 male recruits. The video played, edited for television. Blurred faces for the recruits, but Emma's face was clear, crystal clear, high definition clear, millions of people clear. The talking heads were debating, some praising her, some questioning if she used excessive force, some making it about women in combat, some making it about military culture. Everyone had an opinion about what happened, what it meant, what should happen next. None of them knew the full story. None of them understood the complicated truth, but that didn't stop them from talking. Emma's phone rang again. Her mother, she answered. "Hi, Mom." "Emma, I just saw the news. Are you all right? What happened? They're saying you fought 5 men." "I'm fine, Mom. It's complicated. I can't really talk about it." Can't talk about it. Your face is on national television. People are calling you a hero. They're saying you have secret training. Emma, what's going on? Mom, I promise I'm okay, but I really can't discuss this. Operational security, you understand. Her mother was quiet for a moment, understanding, accepting. She'd been a military wife for 30 years before Emma's father retired, knew about classified information, knew about secrets, knew about things families couldn't know for their own protection. Okay, honey, but you call me if you need anything, anything at all. Your father and I are worried. I will love you. Love you too. Emma hung up, felt exhaustion settling in, not physical. She'd barely exerted herself in the fight, but emotional, mental, the weight of exposure, of scrutiny, of becoming public when she'd spent her career trying to be invisible. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her check. This is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell from Naval Special Warfare Command. We need to talk. Call this number. Secure line. Emma's pulse quickened. Naval Special Warfare Command, the people who ran SEAL operations, who'd trained her, who'd certified her, who'd created her cover story. They wanted to talk. That could mean anything from career-ending disaster to unexpected opportunity. She dialed the number, 3 rings. Mitchell. Ma'am, this is Petty Officer Thompson. You sent me a message. Thompson, good. Thanks for calling back quickly. I've been watching the situation develop. You've become quite famous in the last few hours. Yes, ma'am. I apologize for compromising. Stop. Mitchell's voice was firm but not angry. You didn't compromise anything. You defended yourself against assault. That's not classified. That's common sense. What happens next is what we need to discuss. Emma waited. Let Mitchell control the conversation. We have 2 options, Mitchell continued. Option 1, we maintain your cover, stick to the logistics specialist story, explain away your capabilities as prior martial arts training, civilian background, whatever story we can build that doesn't mention SEAL training. You go back to being invisible, back to the shadows. This becomes a brief moment of celebrity that fades. And option 2. Mitchell paused. Emma could almost hear her choosing words carefully. Option 2, we use this. The Navy has been quietly working toward full integration of women in special operations. Your class was the first, but you've been ghosts, shadows. Nobody knows you exist because we weren't ready to publicly acknowledge female SEALs. This video changes that. You've proven capability in the most public way possible. We could leverage that, make you the face of the program, officially acknowledge what you are. Show the world that women can do this work. Emma's mind raced. Option 1 was safe, familiar, return to anonymity, but it meant hiding, meant pretending to be less than she was, meant letting people continue believing women couldn't hack it in special operations. Option 2 was terrifying, public, exposed, but it meant visibility, representation, showing every young girl watching that they could be warriors too. That gender wasn't limitation. That capability transcended stereotypes. What would option 2 look like? Emma asked. Media appearances, probably congressional testimony about women in combat, recruiting events, public relations. You'd become a symbol, a spokesperson. It would end your operational career. Can't run covert missions when your face is on magazine covers, but you'd be doing something different, something important, changing hearts and minds instead of conducting operations. Can I think about it? You have 24 hours. After that, we need a decision. The media isn't going to wait. The story is developing with or without our input. Better to get ahead of it than react to it. Understood, ma'am. Thompson, for what it's worth, you've already made a difference. That video is being watched by millions of women who now know they can fight back, who see themselves in you, who feel stronger because you refuse to back down. That's not nothing. Whatever you decide, you've already won something that matters. The call ended. Emma sat in her silent apartment, Television still playing, video still looping, her face still everywhere, decision looming, future uncertain. She'd joined the military to serve, to make a difference, to prove herself. She'd endured hell week, completed impossible training, earned the trident that she couldn't publicly wear, became a warrior in secret, operated in shadows, made sacrifices nobody knew about. And now the world was watching, waiting, wondering who she was and what came next. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't against enemies. They're against ourselves, against our fears, against our need for safety and anonymity and the comfortable shadows where we can hide from scrutiny. Emma didn't know what decision she'd make, but she knew one thing. Those 5 recruits had thought they were teaching her a lesson about respect. Instead, they'd taught the world a lesson about assumptions. And sometimes the most important lessons come from the teachers we never expected. By midnight, Emma Thompson's face had been viewed over 50 million times. The video had been shared by news organizations, military blogs, feminist groups, conservative commentators, liberal activists, and everyone in between. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone knew exactly what it meant. Everyone was an expert on something they'd witnessed for 20 seconds. Emma hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. She'd spent the evening reading comments, watching analyses, seeing herself dissected by strangers who didn't know her but felt qualified to judge her. Some comments were supportive. Finally, someone standing up to harassment. Others were critical. Excessive force. She could have just walked away. Others were predictably ugly. The kind of comments that reminded her why some men felt comfortable surrounding women in mess halls. But mixed in with everything else were messages that made her throat tight. From young girls saying they wanted to be strong like her. From women who'd been harassed and wished they'd had her training. From military personnel thanking her for standing up. From people who'd felt invisible their whole lives and suddenly saw themselves represented. At 200 hours, Emma was sitting on her couch in darkness, television muted, phone face down on the coffee table, trying to find quiet in her own head, trying to figure out who she was and who she wanted to be. Her doorbell rang, she froze. Nobody should be here at 2 in the morning. Security at the gate should have stopped anyone. She approached the door carefully, checked the peephole, saw a woman in civilian clothes, professional, mid-40s, familiar somehow. Emma opened the door slightly, chain still engaged. "Can I help you?" "Petty Officer Thompson, I'm Lieutenant Commander Mitchell. We spoke earlier. I'm sorry to arrive unannounced, but this couldn't wait." Emma studied her through the crack. Mitchell held up military ID. Emma verified it, opened the door. "Ma'am, how did you get on base at this hour?" "Special access authorization, perks of working for Naval Special Warfare Command." Mitchell stepped inside, looked around the sparse apartment, noted the packed bags Emma hadn't unpacked from her last deployment, the minimal furniture, the life lived ready to move at a moment's notice. "You're not sleeping either, I see." "Didn't seem worth trying." Mitchell sat down without being invited. Command presence. The kind that said formality could wait when important conversations needed happening. "The situation has accelerated. Senator Patricia Whitmore, chair of the Armed Services Committee, has seen the video. She's calling for immediate hearings on women in special operations, using you as Exhibit A for why the policy should change." Emma sat across from her. That was fast. Politics moves at the speed of viral videos. Whitmore has been pushing for full integration for years. You've handed her the perfect example. A female SEAL who proved capability in the most public way imaginable. She wants you testifying before Congress within the month. "And if I choose option 1, maintain cover, stay invisible?" Mitchell's expression softened slightly. "Then we tell the senator that's not possible, that you're classified, that we can't confirm or deny. We shut it down. You disappear. Change your name if necessary. Transfer to another base under different identity. You'd spend the rest of your career in administrative roles because operational deployment is compromised. But you'd be invisible again. Safe. Anonymous." Emma heard what Mitchell wasn't saying. She'd be hidden, protected, but also sidelined, wasted. All that training, all that capability, relegated to desk work because she defended herself. "What does Naval Special Warfare Command actually want me to do?" Emma asked. "Not what they're offering. What do they want?" Mitchell smiled slightly, appreciation for directness. "Honestly, they're divided. Half think you should disappear, maintain operational security, protect the program. The other half think this is the opportunity we've been waiting for. A chance to show the world that women can do this work. That gender integration isn't just politically correct policy, it's tactical advantage." "And you, what do you think?" "I think you didn't ask to become a symbol. I think you defended yourself and got caught on camera. I think you deserve to make this decision based on what's right for you, not what's convenient for the Navy." Mitchell leaned forward. "But I also think you have a gift for this. Not just the combat skills, the ability to communicate, to make people understand. I've watched your interviews during training. You're articulate, honest, real. Those 5 recruits tried to silence you, and instead they gave you a platform that could change everything." Emma stood, walked to the window, looked out at the base housing, rows of identical buildings. Lives lived in identical patterns, serving something larger, being part of something that mattered. She'd wanted this since childhood, wanted to prove herself, wanted to serve, wanted to make a difference. But she'd imagined making that difference in the shadows, on missions nobody knew about, conducting operations that stayed classified, being the quiet professional, the invisible warrior, not the poster child, not the spokesperson, not the face of social change. "Can I ask you something personal, ma'am?" Emma said quietly. "Of course." "Have you ever felt like you were 2 different people? Like there's who you are and who everyone needs you to be, and they're not the same person?" Mitchell was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried weight of experience. "Every day of my career, I'm a woman in Special Operations Command. I'm qualified for roles I'll never officially hold because the system isn't ready. I'm good enough but not male enough. I understand living in that contradiction." "So what did you do?" "I chose to fight. Not with my fists like you did, with policy, with paperwork, with slow, grinding bureaucratic battles that take years and achieve inches. It's not dramatic, it won't go viral, but it matters. Change happens 1,000 different ways, some loud, some quiet, all necessary." Emma turned from the window. "If I do this, if I choose option 2, what actually happens specifically?" Mitchell pulled out a tablet, opened a document. "We publicly acknowledge you as the first female SEAL. Press conference within 48 hours. You tell your story, answer questions. We control the narrative instead of letting speculation build. Then congressional testimony, media appearances, recruiting events. You'd work with public affairs to develop messaging around women in special operations. Probably write a book, maybe documentary. You become the face of integration. And my SEAL career, actually doing the job I trained for, effectively over. Can't run covert operations when you're recognizable. Can't conduct sensitive missions when your identity is public. You'd transition to training roles. Maybe instruction at Bud S. Maybe developing integration protocols for future female candidates. Important work, just not operational." Emma sat back down, let the weight of it settle, giving up the career she'd fought for, the missions she'd trained for, the operational deployments that had defined her identity, trading it all for visibility, for representation, for being a symbol instead of a warrior. But maybe that was its own kind of mission. Maybe changing hearts and minds was as important as conducting operations. Maybe showing young girls they could be warriors mattered as much as actually being one. Maybe sacrifice came in different forms. "There's something else you should know," Mitchell continued. "Those 5 recruits, they're being court-martialed, assault, conduct unbecoming. The videos made it impossible to sweep under the rug. They're going to be made examples. Their careers are over. And they're claiming you provoked them, that they were defending themselves. that you're some kind of dangerous weapon the Navy created and unleashed. Emma felt anger flash through her. They surrounded me, threatened me, grabbed me first. I know, the evidence is clear, but they're desperate, trying to shift blame, make you the villain, and some people will believe them. Some people will always believe that women who fight back must have done something to deserve harassment. That's the battle you'd be fighting if you choose option 2. Not just changing policy, changing minds that don't want to change. The anger faded, replaced by something clearer. Those 5 recruits were still trying to make her the problem, still trying to make her silence herself, still believing that women should accept harassment quietly, that defending yourself was somehow wrong, that capability was threat instead of asset. And if Emma chose option 1, if she disappeared, they'd win. Not legally, not officially, but symbolically. The woman who fought back would vanish. The story would fade. Nothing would change. And the next woman who faced 5 recruits would have no example to draw strength from. Emma thought about Garcia, about her mother, about every woman who'd watched that video and felt something shift inside, about every young girl who might consider military service because she saw someone who looked like her being strong, about representation and visibility and the responsibility that came with being seen. She thought about her SEAL instructors, about the ones who'd pushed her hardest because they believed she could take it, about the ones who doubted her and been proven wrong, about earning respect through capability, about never quitting even when everything screamed at you to quit. She thought about why she joined the military in the first place, to serve, to make a difference, to prove that gender didn't determine worth. She'd been doing that in shadows, but maybe it was time to do it in daylight. "Ma'am," Emma said quietly, "if I do this, if I become public, can I tell the truth, all of it? Not just the sanitized version, the hard parts, the times I failed, the times I wanted to quit, the times I wasn't sure I'd make it, the real story, not the propaganda version." Mitchell considered. That's actually better. People respond to honesty, to vulnerability, to real humans instead of perfect heroes. Yes, tell the truth, all of it. Emma took a deep breath, let it out slowly, felt decision crystallizing, felt fear and determination mixing together into something like courage, or maybe just acceptance of what was necessary. "Okay," she said, "I'll do it, option 2. I'll be the symbol, the spokesperson, the face of integration. I'll tell my story. I'll fight the fight, but on one condition." "What's that?" "Those 5 recruits, they tried to silence me, to make me small, to make me disappear. I won't let that win. Part of my testimony, part of my story includes what happened that morning, includes the harassment, includes the reality that women in the military face this. Not sugar-coated, not softened. The truth, all of it." Mitchell extended her hand. "Deal. Welcome to the most difficult mission of your career, Petty Officer Thompson. No one's shooting at you, but it might hurt more anyway." They shook. Emma felt something shift. Not relief, not certainty, just commitment. She'd made her choice. Chosen visibility over invisibility. Chosen representation over anonymity. Chosen to be a symbol knowing symbols couldn't be fully human anymore. The next 24 hours would be chaos. Press conferences, briefings, media training, lawyers and public affairs officers and people managing optics. Her life would stop being hers and start belonging to everyone watching, to everyone who needed her to be something, to represent something, to mean something. But maybe that was okay. Maybe meaning something mattered more than privacy. Maybe sacrifice came in forms you never expected. Maybe the hardest battles weren't against enemies, but against the comfortable shadows where you could hide. Emma had hidden long enough. 20 months in the shadows. 20 months being less than she was to protect operational security. 20 months of cover stories and careful words and never saying the truth. Time for the truth, all of it, whatever came next. Sometimes courage isn't charging into battle. Sometimes it's standing in daylight and refusing to hide. 3 weeks later, Emma Thompson sat in a hearing room in the Russell Senate office building. The space was designed for exactly this purpose, making people feel small, making authority feel overwhelming. High ceilings, marble columns, rows of senators elevated on a curved dais, cameras everywhere, media packed into every available space. Her face transmitted live to millions of people watching on television and streaming services. She wore her dress uniform, ribbons she'd earned, trident she couldn't publicly wear until this testimony, hair perfect, posture perfect, everything by the book because symbolism mattered and she was carrying weight for every woman who'd ever been told they weren't enough. Senator Patricia Whitmore gavelled the hearing to order. We're here today to discuss the integration of women into naval special warfare operations. Specifically, we're here to hear from Petty Officer Emma Thompson, who recently became known to the public through her actions at Naval Station Mayport. Petty Officer Thompson, thank you for your service and for being here today. Thank you, Senator. Emma's voice was steady. She'd practiced this. Media training, mock hearings, preparation for every possible question, but preparation only went so far. At some point, you had to just tell the truth and hope it mattered. Petty Officer Thompson, can you tell us about your background? About how you came to be in that mess hall on the morning your video went viral? Emma took a breath. This was it, the official acknowledgement, the public reveal, the end of 20 months of cover and the beginning of whatever came next. Senator, 23 months ago, I graduated from basic underwater demolition SEAL training. I was one of 3 women in my class. I'm the only one who completed the full program. For the past 20 months, I've been operating under cover assignment to protect operational security while the Navy determined how to integrate women into special operations roles. The room erupted. Murmurs, camera flashes, reporters on phones, everyone reacting to what many suspected but nobody had confirmed until this moment. The first female SEAL, public, official, real. Whitmore gavelled for order, and the incident at the mess hall. Senator, I was eating breakfast when 5 male recruits surrounded me. They made threats based on my gender, suggested I didn't belong in the military. When one of them grabbed me, I defended myself using techniques I learned during SEAL training. The entire encounter lasted approximately 20 seconds. Some have suggested you used excessive force, that you could have de-escalated differently. What's your response? Emma met the senator's eyes, honest, direct, no political calculation, just truth. Senator, I gave those men multiple opportunities to walk away. I warned them repeatedly. I tried to de-escalate verbally before any physical contact occurred. When they chose to escalate anyway, I responded with appropriate force to end the threat quickly without causing permanent injury. Could I have done things differently? Yes. I could have let them harass me. I could have walked away. I could have accepted abuse to avoid confrontation. I chose not to do those things because I believed I had a right to defend myself and my dignity. Whitmore nodded. Tell us about your SEAL training. What was it like? How did you overcome the challenges? Emma spent the next hour telling her story. The real story, not sanitized, not softened. She talked about Hell Week, about carrying boats until her shoulders screamed, about swimming in ocean so cold she couldn't feel her hands, about running on stress fractures because quitting was an option, about instructors who believed in her and instructors who thought she'd never make it. She talked about being the only woman, about proving herself every single day, about the weight of representation, about knowing that if she failed, people would say all women couldn't do it, about the unfairness of that burden and the necessity of carrying it anyway. She talked about the moments she wanted to quit, about the times she cried in the shower where nobody could see, about the pain and doubt and fear and the decision to keep going anyway, because stopping meant validating everyone who said she couldn't. And she talked about the morning in the mess hall, about 5 young men who decided her presence was threat, who felt entitled to harass her, who believed size trumped skill. She talked about their assumptions and her response and the 20 seconds that changed everything. "The truth is," Emma said, voice carrying through the quiet room, "those 5 recruits saw a woman and assumed weakness. They saw someone smaller and decided that meant someone vulnerable. They made the same assumptions many people make about women in combat roles, that we're not strong enough, not fast enough, not capable enough, that our presence somehow diminishes the military." She paused, let it settle. Those assumptions almost cost them serious injury, but more importantly, those assumptions are preventing the military from accessing 50% of the population for special operations roles. We're limiting our talent pool based on outdated beliefs about gender and capability. That doesn't make us stronger, it makes us weaker. Senator Whitmore leaned forward. "What would you say to young women considering military service, especially those interested in special operations?" Emma thought about Garcia, about her mother, about every message she'd received from girls saying they wanted to be SEALs now, about representation and responsibility and the weight of being first. "I'd tell them it's hard," Emma said honestly. "Harder than you can imagine. The training will break you down repeatedly. You'll want to quit. You'll doubt yourself. People will doubt you. Some will want you to fail. The pressure will be enormous because you're not just representing yourself. You're representing every woman who comes after you." She paused. "But I'd also tell them it's possible, that your gender doesn't determine your capability, that you can do hard things, that you belong anywhere your skills and determination can take you, that the most important battles aren't against enemies. They're against the voices telling you that you can't. And winning those battles, proving those voices wrong, that's worth everything." The hearing continued for another 2 hours. Questions about training protocols, about integration strategies, about standards and whether they should be adjusted. Emma was clear. Don't lower standards. Don't create separate tracks. Make the training hard and let whoever can complete it serve regardless of gender. Some senators were supportive, some were skeptical. Some asked questions designed to catch her in inconsistencies. Emma answered everything honestly. Sometimes her honesty wasn't politically convenient. Sometimes it didn't fit neat narratives, but it was true, and truth mattered more than comfort. When the hearing finally ended, Emma was exhausted, not physically, but emotionally, mentally. She just spent hours being dissected by the nation, analyzed, judged, debated. Her life had become public property, her choices examined by millions, her worth determined by people who'd never carried a ruck march or conducted a night operation. Outside the building, media waited, cameras, microphones, reporters shouting questions. Emma's public affairs escort tried to guide her to the waiting car, but Emma stopped, turned to the cameras. "One more statement, one more truth. 3 weeks ago, 5 men tried to make me silent, tried to make me small, tried to convince me I didn't belong. They failed. Today, I stand here as proof that women belong in every role we're capable of filling. That gender doesn't determine worth. That capability transcends stereotypes. To every woman watching who's been told she can't, who's been dismissed or underestimated or harassed, I want you to know something." She paused, let the moment breathe. "You are enough. Your strength is not defined by anyone else's expectations. Your worth is not determined by their approval. You belong wherever your skills and determination take you. And when someone tries to silence you, tries to diminish you, tries to make you smaller, you have every right to stand your ground, to defend yourself, to refuse to be less than you are." Emma looked directly into the closest camera, spoke to every girl watching, every woman who'd ever felt invisible. Dignity doesn't need permission. Strength doesn't require approval. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to hide. She walked to the car, cameras following, questions shouting, but Emma was done speaking. She'd said what needed saying. The rest was for others to figure out. 6 months later, Emma stood in a training facility at Naval Special Warfare Center. She'd transitioned from operational roles to instruction. teaching the next generation of SEAL candidates, developing integration protocols, working with female candidates who were following the path she'd cleared. She thought about those 5 recruits sometimes, about Tyler and Brandon and Carlos and Anthony and Kevin. They'd been court-martialed, received other than honorable discharges. Their names would forever be associated with the morning they tried to harass a woman and learned she was a warrior. She didn't hate them, didn't celebrate their failure. They'd been young, stupid, products of a culture that taught them women were less. They'd paid for their assumptions. Whether they'd learned from that payment, whether they'd grown, whether they'd become better men, Emma didn't know. She hoped they had. Hoped they'd take that moment and let it transform them instead of embitter them. But mostly, Emma thought about the future. About the young women now applying for SEAL training in numbers that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. About cultural change happening slowly but undeniably. About representation mattering in ways that couldn't be quantified but absolutely could be felt. Her phone buzzed, message from Garcia. They'd stayed in touch, become friends. Saw your interview on 60 Minutes, you killed it, proud to know you. Emma smiled, typed back, coffee next week. Absolutely. She put her phone away, looked at the training schedule for tomorrow, mock operations, weapons qualifications. The work continued. Different now, public instead of private, visible instead of invisible, but still serving, still making a difference, just in ways she'd never imagined. The sun was setting over the Pacific, orange and pink painting the sky. Emma stood outside, feeling the ocean breeze, remembering why she'd joined, to serve something larger, to make a difference, to prove that capability mattered more than gender. She'd done that, was still doing that, would continue doing that, not through secret missions that nobody knew about, but through visible testimony to the truth that women were warriors too. That strength came in many forms. That dignity didn't need permission to exist. 20 seconds in a mess hall had changed her life, had ended one career and started another, had forced her from shadows into spotlight, had transformed her from operator to symbol. Was it what she'd wanted? No. Was it what she'd choose again? Yes, because sometimes the most important battles aren't the ones you plan. They're the ones that find you, that choose you, that demand you decide who you want to be when the world is watching. Emma had decided, had chosen truth over comfort, visibility over anonymity, being a symbol over hiding in shadows. It cost her privacy, cost her operational career, cost her the quiet professional life she'd imagined. But it gave her something else: purpose, platform, the ability to change minds and open doors and show the world that women belonged in every arena they were capable of filling. Those 5 recruits thought they were teaching her about respect. Instead, they'd taught the world about assumptions, about underestimation, about the danger of judging capability by appearance. Emma Thompson had been underestimated her whole life. Too small, too female, too quiet. People saw her and made assumptions, made calculations, made mistakes. She'd spent her career proving those assumptions wrong, in the shadows first, in daylight now. The method changed. The mission remained the same. Prove that women are warriors too. That dignity doesn't need permission. That sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is simply refusing to be less than you are. In the end, that's what those 20 seconds had been about. Not fighting, not dominance, not revenge, just a simple refusal to be diminished, to be silenced, to accept that her gender determined her worth. Emma had refused, had stood her ground, had defended herself, had sparked a conversation that was still echoing through military halls and congressional chambers and living rooms across America. Would it change everything overnight? No, culture moves slowly. Institutions resist change. Old beliefs die hard, but change was happening, undeniably, measurably. Young women were enlisting, applying for special operations, following a path that Emma had helped clear. That mattered, more than any individual mission, more than any operational success, more than any classified achievement that would never be acknowledged. Representation mattered. Visibility mattered. Being the first mattered because it meant there would be a second, and a third, and eventually so many that being a female SEAL wouldn't be remarkable, wouldn't require testimony, wouldn't need defending. Just another qualified warrior doing the job, gender irrelevant, capability everything. That future was coming. Emma could feel it. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. And she'd helped build it, 20 seconds at a time, one testimony at a time, one young girl at a time who saw Emma and thought maybe I could do that too. The ocean breeze picked up. Emma closed her eyes, breath deep, let go of what was lost and embraced what was gained. Different didn't mean worse. Change didn't mean failure. Evolution was survival. She'd evolved, from invisible operator to visible symbol, from hidden warrior to public spokesperson, from quiet professional to testifying truth-teller. The mission changed. The service continued. And that, Emma thought, was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And sometimes one act of refusing to be silent echoes louder than a lifetime of quiet compliance. Emma Thompson had found her voice, in the least expected place, in the most public way, through 20 seconds that would define a career and spark a movement and prove that underestimation was the most dangerous assumption of all. The 5 recruits had wanted to teach her about respect. Instead, they'd learned it, the hard way, the public way, the way that changes you forever. And Emma, she'd learned something too. That visibility came with cost but also with power. That being seen meant being vulnerable but also being undeniable. That sometimes the most important service wasn't conducted in shadows but in daylight where everyone could witness and learn and grow. She'd made her peace with that, with being symbol instead of operator, with trading secret missions for public testimony, with becoming what was needed instead of what she'd planned. Because in the end, service meant sacrifice, and sacrifice came in forms you never anticipated. And sometimes the greatest impact came from being exactly what you were, openly and unapologetically, and letting the world deal with their assumptions. Emma Thompson was a warrior, a SEAL, a woman, all three simultaneously, no contradiction, no conflict, just truth. And truth, she'd learned, was the most powerful weapon of all.